So welcome to Knox, and in this episode we've got guest presenter Adam Child, aka Chad, with us. Chad's been out to a very busy city, Bangkok, to ride the all-new Royal Enfield Hunter 350. And basically we're going to tell you all about it, aren't we?
Yeah, tough job.
Tough job. So Chad, you've been out to Bangkok on a first class flight by the looks of it.
Yeah.
It looked pretty like a swanky event. Tell us a bit about it.
It was not the hardest job I've ever
No,
done.
it didn't look it.
No, it was when I was at the bar on the plane and the stewardess asked me if she'd like to make my bed up for me. It was at that point I realised that this is going to be pretty easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially Royal Enfield laid out the red carpet and couldn't have done any more. So it was one of the best hotels in Bangkok. We flew first class, and then when we arrived, we had a day off to get used to the climate because it's so humid, so hot, and obviously the time difference.
Yeah.
And then the first ride was at night because Bangkok comes alive at night, the temperature drops, and it's just amazing. Riding around Bangkok at night is just, it's complete and utter chaos that makes progress.
Okay.
So you don't get any, there's no road rage or people getting annoyed, even though there's tuk-tuks coming the wrong way with no lights on and people riding. You're supposed to wear a full face helmet at all times, but I didn't supposed to.
Yeah.
I did. But we literally looked like spacemen.
Did you?
Because nobody else was, flip-flops, 3 on a bike, 2 side saddle, 7 people in a tuk-tuk, taxis with no lights on. And then you've got a Lamborghini Gallardo next to an Aston Martin in certain areas. So the idea was, the first was a night ride, and we rode to a go-kart track to do some controlled gymkhana, which turned into an absolute
controlled chaos
on a track that had been baked in heat all day that had no grip. And then the following day we just had a general road ride like you would do normally on a Sunday morning when it was supposed to be quiet, which was quiet by there.
But by sort of
no, it was like 5 o'clock in London.
What was it?
Yeah, they were like, it'd be quiet Sunday morning, and you'd leave the hotel. It's just like, where's everybody going, or are they coming back?
So it was a good launch basically. Quite different to your usual.
Very, very, very different, and very cleverly by Enfield.
Yeah.
Because if you launch Panigale, you do it on track.
Yeah, sure.
If you'd have launched this bike with only around 20 horsepower anywhere else, it would have shown its weakness, which is the power. Where in Bangkok, when you can't get up to speed, then it's ideal. And at every set of traffic lights, all the scooters emerge at the front. And a 350 Enfield is a big bike.
Yeah.
Everybody's going, wow, that's a 350. Because you're surrounded by 125, 50cc. I was there for 4 days and I think I saw 4 bikes over 600cc.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, that is the market they're aimed at.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a aspirational wow bike. In the same way we would maybe see a Goldwing or a Harley or to us what is a big bike, a 350 single cylinder in India is not a middleweight, it's a big bike. That's a proper...
Oh sure, yeah, it's a proper motorbike.
Proper motorbike.
Yeah.
So the engine is shared with the other 350s in the range. So it's the same single cylinder air-cooled 350 unit that you find in the other models. That has remained unchanged. But everything else about the bike has been changed. So when I first saw the bike, I thought it was just another 350 in different clothes, they put a different tank on. But it's very, very different. So to start with, it's their sportiest, if you can call it that, of their range. So they've gone for 17-inch wheels, which I think is the first time Enfield have ever done, modern Enfield have done 17-inch wheels. The rake and the trail is slightly different, the wheelbase is shorter, the rigidity in the frame is different. So if you can imagine, you've got smaller, much lighter wheels, shorter wheelbase, steeper steering head angle, so that makes it much more sporty. They say they've quickened the throttle or changed the response. Bearing in mind it's got there or thereabouts 20 horsepower, there's not a lot they can really do with it. So it is slightly changed in performance, but it's the same quoted power, the same quoted torque as the rest of the range. So essentially take that engine, put it in a different chassis, make it far more sporty and far more, in my opinion, attractive.
So when you're talking about the 350 engine, we're talking about the same one that's in the Meteor 350?
Yeah, in the Meteor. So it's very...
That's a new engine platform basically for them, isn't it?
Yeah, for them it's a new engine, but it is very basic. Is the easiest. It's air cooled. It's not water cooled. It's a single cylinder, and it's pretty simplistic and basic. But you have to remember that these bikes are made primarily for the Indian market, where they need to be relatively simple. They could have gone water cooled. If you've got water cooling, then you've got a radiator. If you've got a radiator, you've got cooling pipes. You've got problems that can happen. Where this is just a bike that you could leave on the throttle stop for 3 days, and it's going to be fine.
Fantastic. Well, I think the thing that I saw when I first saw the pictures and obviously the video of you riding it, man, the thing looks awesome. It looks different to what I've seen Royal Enfields look like in the past. If you think about like the classic 500, the classic 350, even the Interceptor to an extent, it's closer to that bike than some of the more classic looking ones. Obviously you see the Meteor 350, it's quite a classic looking bike, or cruiser style. I was like, wow, that looks really sporty.
Yeah, it looks really. I think what Enfield have done previously is fallen back on their classic.
Yeah.
Enfield was a classic bike that didn't leak oil and would start.
Yeah.
You mean that in a complimentary way.
Yeah.
And I think they've stepped away from that and still got that simplistic engine and simplistic way of riding, but it looks modern.
It does.
It looks really modern and it looks good. And the other thing about the bike is, aside from just looking, it feels mechanical.
Does it?
So you've ridden 250 and 350 and 390 bikes, and they feel flimsy or toy-like, because they've been built for a price, but they've also been built to be lightweight, and the plastic's a little bit flimsy, or the clocks are a bit basic, or whatever. This feels like it's been made out of metal with somebody with a hammer.
Right.
It doesn't feel like
sturdy.
It doesn't feel like a 350 that, it feels like you could push it over.
Yeah.
A car would drive over it, you could pick it up and you could start it and go again, which goes back to this market, which is the emerging markets, like India, where you're going to ride, you, your wife, your children, the pets, everything's going to be on the bike. So it needs to be sturdy. It needs to be able to go through potholes. It needs to be able to go through deep water. It needs to be able to fall over and get picked back up again without breaking or bending. I mean, the clocks are simple, and the switch key is really simple. Big buttons, like a 70s Bond movie, like the baddie would have in his studio. And the bolts and everything that they use is really big and solid.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of finesse to it. You're not going to go, oh, that's Art Deco, or that's been designed by. It's belts and braces. It's spamming a tin.
Yeah, yeah.
But because they make so many of the bikes in India, that keeps the cost low. Where I think other manufacturers have to keep costs low from a material side because they can't produce the numbers that they do in India.
When I watched this marketing video, they talked about, big part of their engine development is getting the thump. The sound of the Royal Enfield, because that's kind of part of their appeal. Yeah, I suppose. Do you think have they transferred that?
Yeah, they've definitely. I mean, it's Euro 5. It passes all Euro 5 regulations.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But there's definitely a pop to it.
Yeah.
It's got especially in Bangkok, because the noise is always reverberating off tuk-tuks or cars or through tunnel. And it's one of those bikes, you'll know what you mean, where you hear the bike in front of you. Because we ride on a launch where there's 6 of them, you hear the bike. You don't necessarily hear the bike you're on, you hear the one in front of you.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you hear it, you're like, yeah, that's got a little bit of a pop to it. And on the overrun, on high revs, ba ba ba.
Yeah, nice.
It sounds really good, and it's difficult because in Bangkok, you've got ba 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 ba. You've got so much noise and chaos. It's actually difficult to have a conversation. And we go again! That's awesome! We got this chaos! There's people with a kids on the front! But when you take that bike to the Cotswolds, or here we are in the Lake District, and you're going down a nice little B road or an unmarked road, it's going to have a nice little bit of charm to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Without being offensive and without sounding like a really diluted bike, like some of the smaller capacity, low revving bikes. Just, you sit on it and you're unsure if it's ticking over or not.
Sure.
Where this, you can actually feel the single,
Yeah, which is lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, just those little things, you feel a few vibes through the bars. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so that sort of leads us on nicely to who do you think what's the target market? Who do you think is going to be interested in one of these?
Well, the interesting thing is that when I spoke to the guys from Royal Enfield from India, their target market is India.
Right.
Because the vast majority of their sales is in India, which is why it's been over-engineered, why it's so simple, because it's for the Indian market. And then Europe and us guys are kind of like, we're less than 10% of their complete global sales.
Sure.
But for the Europeans and in the UK, I think it'll appeal to two. I think one, you've got your A2 license holders who like the look of it, the simplicity of it, and the price, because it's going to be that £3,500 to £4,000. And once it comes to PCP, it's going to be about the same as your mobile phone or your Sky Bill. So you've got the price aspect, the simplicity, the ease of use, and the looks. And then I think you've got a different generation who like the simplicity of this kind of street jacket and jeans bike.
Yeah.
The guys who maybe from 60 to 70 years old or that kind of era. And again, they might have a Thruxton, or they might have a Z-Thou or whatever in their garage that there's their pride and joy that they paid 10 to 15,000 for. But this is another bike they can have on the side that's $3,500.
And just use it when when they'd like to.
You bring your KTM Super Duke out, and you've got to put your race levers on, and you've got to write a note to the wife who's going to be panicking because you're going to be gone for the next hour. Or you can just put on a jacket, some riding boots, or maybe an open face helmet, and go see your mate in the pub, or pop to wherever, or pop to Windermere to feed the ducks.
Yeah, right.
I think there's guys who've got Ducati Multistradas and GSs and £20,000 adventure bikes, but they want a Himalayan for £4 or £5
Sure.
that they can bounce down a green lane, they can ride in winter if it falls over, or if the kid, if one of my boys pushes his bike next to it and scratches the tank, I'm going to be annoyed, but it's not just scratch the tank of the Panigale. And I think for this price, it's that bike you can have in the back of your garage,
I'm thinking, and I looked at it and I thought the colourways that they've got is really quite attractive.
Yeah.
They've got some really nice colourways, but I can definitely see that there'll be a bit of a custom sort of scene for this bike as well. That there's aftermarket trick people. You can get your bar end indicators, and you can get a different mudguard for it and a different front light. Yeah. People are going to enjoy customizing them, aren't they? I think I can see.
Yeah,
that.
they're definitely going to. There's many aspects. So they're going to enjoy customizing it to make it personal.
Yes.
There's a load of accessories that Enfield already offer. Exhausts are going to be customized straight away. But the other thing is, if you try and customize something that's water cooled or has got lean sensitive IMU 6 rider, where this you could literally just get a hacksaw and chop bits off, and as long as you don't
chop it in half.
Yeah, as long as you don't hit a cable, you're gonna be okay. You could take the exhaust off, put something else on, and exhaust is so crucial to the performance of a motorcycle. But when you've got a 20 horsepower basic air-cooled bike,
it's not going to make too much
It's not
difference
making a
either way.
massive amount of difference. Nobody's going to go in and go, I'm 2 seconds off my best lap time because the exhaust that I just put on is being made by X.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to enjoy moving foot pegs, putting different exhausts on, chopping down front mud guards, and again, if you make a mistake, you go, well, I paid £3,500 for it. It's still worth £3,000.
Yeah.
I've not just drawn a mustache on Leonardo's best creation. I've not destroyed my Panigale. I've just chopped something off that maybe I shouldn't have chopped off.
Yeah.
Hey, come on, don't count away. Beep, beep. This is just ace. What I would change, like we spoke earlier, was the only thing I would definitely change is the tyres.
Yeah, well, that was my next question. Downsides.
Downside is the Indian branded, Indian made tyres. Again, we revert back to they're made for the Indian market. The Indian market want a tyre that lasts forever. You know, that'll take weight as well, and that'll work a little bit off road as well. You know, in different scenarios. What we want is a tyre that grips, because we're from a sportier
Cold environment as well.
Well, not really. I mean, India in places is freezing on a night. There's a lot of snow in the Himalayas.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's where the Yeti came from.
Yeah, right. Okay. So what would you change to? What would you
the
change
tyres
to?
have been built for a price,
Yeah.
and they've been built in partnership, designed for this motorcycle, and I can see that, and they are going to last forever. And I think 7 out of 10 customers are probably never going to change them.
Right.
But for the price of a couple of £100, maybe 150 quid, and you can put on some period-looking Pirelli Phantoms.
Yes.
They're great tyres. They're 17-inch wheels. They're very narrow. So it's going to cost you 100, 150 quid, maybe 200 quid at most to change the tyres. And that'll just give you that extra confidence, that extra peace of mind, and a little bit more grip and a little bit more feel. Follow that board. Right, here we go. This could be bad. Nope, that's with it. I mean, how awesome is this?
Anything else?
Once you do start riding aggressive, you know, you have foot peg ground clearance, then you have the exhaust eventually. But you've got to ride fairly aggressive, but that depends on how you ride and your weight. So if you're a bigger rider, maybe 2 up, you're going to run out of ground clearance quicker. You can change the preload on the shock, which is pretty simple and easy to do on the shock. But for me, as we mentioned, Enfield cleverly launched the bike in a crowded city where power isn't important. If you ride it in London, there's 20-mile-an-hour zones, 30-mile-an-hour zones, over Tower Bridge, in the congestion. Again, power, not going to be a problem. But if you rode out of London, say Brands Hatch to go watch a BSB, or you went into the Surrey Hills for a bit of a ride out, put some heels in, put some headwind in, put a pillion on, all these factors.
I run out of steam.
You're running out of steam. It will do an indicated 70. 60 mile an hour is comfortable. And I think we could put it on paddock stands and leave it at 70 miles an hour, absolutely flat out, and leave it for a week. And as long as we kept putting fuel in it and come back and it'd still be fine. It will take an absolute hammering. But once you get out of that, you know, that 40 to 60 miles an hour bit.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to,
you're brushing up against.
Yeah, because trucks now are 55, 60. You know, if you want to come past a truck on a dual carriageway.
No chance. Well,
you'll come out the slipstream and you'll soon go back in it. You know, you just sometimes you need that extra bit of zip, that extra little bit of power just to get. But as I say, if you're in somewhere fairly congested, and you're on your A2 license and you're new to bikes, then fine. But for those guys who have got one big bike and are coming down, there's going to be moments where you're overtaking and you're still looking at them. Still here. Still here. Still here. You know, you're going to be slowly passing going, have you seen the mud guard that I cut off? You know, and you're going to have to do that embarrassing kind of, I've got to come back
retreat.
Retreat.
Yeah.
And that's against a black cab in London. You know?
Right.
We're not trying to overtake Ferraris. It's going to be like, oh dear, I'm back again.
Yeah. But I suppose, you know, you that's part and parcel of riding a bike.
It is part and parcel, and it is some of the charm of Royal Enfield. I mean, I've ridden Enfields in India. I've ridden 350s, and that is part of the charm, is that you've got to plan your overtake. You've got to plan what you do. But as I say, if you're a bigger rider and you're going into a headwind and you just want to get there and it's raining and it's November and you're on the A12.
It's not the right tool for that.
No, you're going to be sat on a dual carriageway in a slipstream of a truck with all that being thrown at you, just going,
get me home.
Yeah, I just want to be home now.
They always run the risk of being underpowered, don't they? You know, the Royal Enfield bikes. But I tell you what, they always sell.
Yeah.
You know, so I was just actually looking at the registration figures for August 22, and out of the top 10, Royal Enfield have actually got 3 of those bikes. So they've got the Meteor 350, they've got the Classic 350, and they've got the Inceptor 650 in that top 10 category. You know? Yeah,
it's gonna build on the success story that Enfield have created. And almost 5 years ago, you'd have got laughed out of town if you'd have said, oh, in 5 years' time, Royal Enfield are going to have 3 bikes in the top 10. more than BMW's GS.
Yeah.
If you'd have put bets on
Isn't
that,
it? Yeah.
you'd be a rich man.
Yeah.
And this bike is due to be the cheapest of the 350 range. And to me, it's the most attractive. I think it's the most appealing, it's the most attractive.
I do.
You know, it's the bike that I would have in the 350 range.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's going to be the cheapest.
So Chad, that's been a really good chat about what I think is going to be a really popular bike. Question is, I mean, where do you see us in another year's time?
I see in the short term, I think we'll see some really nice customs, hopefully. I see people starting to chop and play with these bikes. And then if we sit here in summer next year, I think this is going to follow on the success of Enfield. This is going to be in that top 10 again. Yeah. This is going to be cheap, easy, great, fun transport. You know, it is what it is. You know, it's fish and chips in newspaper with baked beans on the side. You know, it's not trying to be anything else. It is what it is. And what it tries to do, it achieves. And I think it's going to be a great bike.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thanks very much for watching. Thanks, Chad, for coming along and going out to Bangkok.
It was really tough.
Yeah.
I mean, at one stage, the wine was just a little bit too much, just too warm.
Well, was it? Yeah, right. Good stuff. Okay, well, thanks very much. Please let us know what you think in the comments section. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And check out all of the Knox gear that Chad was using on test to protect himself. And we will see you next time.